I want to thank you all for being here today, and as we begin our winter meeting here in Washington, D.C., I'd like to bring your attention to our U.S. Metro Economies report that I have here. And once again, it tells the story, a story that we have told here in Washington again and again and again. And that's the story that America's cities are leading a fragile recovery, but it's time for Washington to join in the effort. They need a wake-up call. It's time to end the politics of block and punt as we enter this playoff season and start doing something to put people back to work. Today, the mayor's released, as I said, our 2012 report, and the findings couldn't be clearer. While D.C. dithers, our metro areas are driving America's economy. You know, there's a lot of talk, and there should be, about the 1% and the 99% of us who are struggling to make ends meet. But what this report chronicles is the 90% of the GDP that's generated in our nation's metropolitan areas. The 85% of the jobs which are produced in our metro areas. We saw in 2011 we had a 1.3% job growth across the country. That's an anemic rate by anybody's standards. We're told, at least in this report, that we're expecting somewhere in the neighborhood of a 2% job growth in the coming year. It doesn't have to be that way. Virtually all of the job growth that's been generated in the country has been generated in cities like the ones represented by the mayors who are here today. In my own city, as an example, on our own, without a federal partnership, we're investing $4 billion, 40,000 jobs to modernize our airport, to make it the true gateway to Asia. We're investing about $1.2 billion, generating 20,000 jobs, to deepen our harbor, to expand the capacity at our port, to be able to compete with Panama. As you all know, we passed to Measure R, half-penny sales tax, generating $40 billion. With a partnership with the federal government, we can generate 166,000 jobs in LA alone. If the Congress gets off its duff and does what it should do, and that's pass the surface transportation bill, we can generate millions of jobs in the United States of America. If they pass America Fast Forward, which now 120 mayors have gotten behind, we can use local investments like ours in LA and in cities across the country to put people back to work now, to accelerate, in our case, 40 years of investment in a 10-year period of time. Or 30 years of investment in a 10-year period of time. We can't do that without the federal government. Now, we saw last year, we were here, all of us, and we called on the Congress to fix the deficit and the debt. Many of us were Democrats, were Republicans, but we challenged our own party to address entitlements as part of the solution. We also challenged the other party, depending on which one you come from, to address the need to close tax loopholes and strike a grand bargain around the idea that tax fairness is not class warfare. Tax fairness is something we have all believed in on both sides of the aisle. So these are the kinds of issues that are facing our nation's mayor. And I like to quote my friend to the right, our Vice President, Mayor Nutter. He always says, when someone approaches him on the street, nobody asks him about the deficit. They ask him for a job. And that's what we're asking the Congress to do as well. We're asking them to do their job. We saw last summer that they failed to address either the deficit or the debt. They put us on the brink of default. Then they put together a super committee which was supposed to have struck a grand bargain, find a common ground, move away from the partisanship, and strike a bargain that cuts our spending but also makes the appropriate investments. We put forth a common sense jobs agenda, which in many ways was a reflection of both Democratic and Republican views on what we need to do to put people back to work. So we're hoping that they'll do a little better job than they did last year. I've mentioned, and I think we all agree, that if you were to put a grade on last year, you'd have to give them an F for failure. They didn't do much in the way of job creation, but they have an opportunity. We all know that when you get an F at the midterm, you can work hard to get that grade up, and we're hoping that that's what they'll do. So we're asking them to pass the surface transportation bill to extend at least for a year the payroll tax cut, to make the kinds of investments in America Fast Forward and other things that will put people back to work. With me is the vice president of this organization, the mayor of Philadelphia, Michael Nutter, who is among the most articulate people on the issue of job creation in our nation's cities.
Good morning, and President Villaraigosa, thank you so much. The President makes the case of why we can't wait. And to continue what the President said, given the rating that the President has given to Congress, they're going to need a whole lot of extra credit projects to demonstrate to the American public why they should even have the jobs that they have. They have jobs. Millions of Americans do not have jobs. I haven't heard talk of the American Jobs Act in months. What happened? It really begs the question, what is the Congress doing each and every day while they supposedly work for the American people while millions of Americans are out of work? We need investments in infrastructure, in our schools, in our bridges, in our roads. We need more cops on the streets, and we need to make sure that workforce development and training programs, the community development block grant programs, these are programs that have demonstrated year after year after year. They work on the ground in cities. The President has laid out the case. 80+% of Americans live in a city. 85% of the jobs in America in cities and metro areas. 90+% of the GDP of the United States of America in cities and metro areas all across the country. This is about jobs, jobs, and more jobs for Americans. We need to put people back to work. That's what we do each and every day in our cities, and sometimes, even without federal support, we're making things happen. But the federal support really does make a difference. It makes a difference at Philly International Airport while we try to expand that airport to serve more and more passengers and bring tourism and hospitality to Philadelphia. It makes a difference when we're revitalizing literally our city hall, the largest city hall in North America, with a Tiger Grant. It makes a difference when we're building affordable housing for children and seniors and making sure that people have the services they need in their communities. Our report demonstrates that because of the cut in the budget on CDBG alone, $1 billion, 35,000 jobs have not happened as a result of that. Yet this is a program that gives you a triple return. $4 billion budget, $12 billion in GDP output just from that one program. And so the question that I've continued to ask is not only what is the Congress doing, but does the Congress even understand what they're doing when they do it? They're disinvesting in our cities, which are the incubators of innovation and technology and growth all across the United States of America. We need a real discussion about where we're going in the future, how we can use this Metro Economies report to help Los Angeles and Baltimore and Columbus and Burnsville and Mesa and so many other cities, and of course Philadelphia, all across the United States of America. Lastly, billions of dollars of capital sitting still on the sidelines. President Obama and the Congress saved the banking industry, yet they sit on stockpiles of money that could be invested in fixing our water systems, our highways. Every possible piece of infrastructure in the United States of America needs investment, and the federal government, unlike any city here, has no capital budget. How can you possibly run a government and not know where you're going to make investments 5, 10, 15 years down the line? That's not good governance. That's just running around in circles and making the lives of many, many millions of Americans miserable. And so we have to get things done as mayors all across this country. I wish the Congress had the same work ethic that mayors do in the United States of America. Thank you.
I don't know why I got a brain freeze. From Mesa, Arizona, a mayor representing the conference, the second vice president, a man who has stood with us in calling on the Congress to do its job, Mayor Scott Smith.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think the common theme that you're hearing here is that cities matter. This is where the action is, and if you felt a certain frustration with mayors, it's because when this financial crisis began and through the last 3 to 4 years, you've seen cities respond. You've seen cities meet the crisis, deal with it, and continue to do the best we can to provide services to our citizens at a high level. And there's a reason for that. We don't get the luxury of kicking things down the street. We can't punt. And so there is a frustration when we see other levels of government who talk a lot but don't do a lot. We want action. We want smart investments. We don't want to waste money. We understand fiscal responsibility. We understand the federal government's challenges. But we also understand that when you make smart investments, when you invest in infrastructure that has long-term returns, when you invest in programs like CDBG that have direct returns, not filtered or diluted returns, direct returns that create jobs, create economic activity, you can do certain things. And we've pointed those out in our jobs program that we presented a while ago. Things as simple as, for example, the visa issues that could bring literally thousands and thousands of foreign tourists to our shores that create instant jobs, that create instant economic activity. There are things that can be done that aren't being done. Cities matter. We're here with realistic expectations. We know this is an election year that we have, like this nation has not seen in a long time. But we will continue to shout from the rooftops if we have to, that cities matter. We're here. We want to be partners in this economic rebound because this is where the action is. We think we have a lot to offer. Our message will be heard, and we'll keep yelling it as long as we have to because we think this is the future not only of our cities, not only of our metro areas, but the future of our country. And we are assets that need to be maximized. We are ready and willing to work with the federal government to create jobs and to do things that are right. And that's the message of cities. We matter, we care. Thank you.
And with that, we'd be more than happy to answer any questions. As you could see, there are a number of mayors who are here. Some of them are also in meetings. As I understand it, this is the highest attended meeting in a very long time. And the reason is clear. We all recognize that we have to come together to speak on behalf of the nation's cities. And as America's cities go, as you see in this report, so go the nation. Any questions?
Yes, Laredo Mayor Raul Salinas called this morning to do something about immigration reform. So I'm wondering what's the conference plan for this year, and whether you see a contradiction between the fact of this conference will work for immigration reforms, which would bring millions of people to the legal workforce, and the fact that your cities are facing high unemployment.
You know, it's interesting. I had an opportunity to speak to a group of reporters at the Christian Science Monitor earlier today, and I was saying that the mayors, and there are both Democratic and Republican mayors here, we're not nearly as partisan. Our debates are never as polarized. We are much more practical and focused on problem solving. So as an example, over the last number of years, this conference on a unanimous basis, has come out by acclamation, has come out in support of comprehensive immigration reform. The immigration system is broken. Everybody acknowledges that, on the left, on the right, and yet this Congress has failed to do anything about it. And you're absolutely right. You bring, yes, we should secure our borders. We should make sure that people pay their taxes and are law-abiding. They should get at the end of the line, but in the end, we should provide a pathway for citizenship and bringing those people, the dreamers alone, the young kids who were raised here, who were brought here by their parents, they alone will generate more than $1 trillion to the U.S. economy. If you're talking about the 12 million people who are here, if you brought them out of the dark and into the light, they will add trillions to the U.S. economy. So it is a jobs issue. Unfortunately, we can't get the Congress to do their job on any of these issues. Beg your pardon?
I was wondering if you can address the report, because while there's some good news about recovering jobs, that there's a section here that talks about some 80 cities.
Yeah, there are 340 cities still trying to recover from the recession. About 80 of our metro areas need another 5 years to dig themselves out of the hole. About 25 have recovered the jobs that they lost at the beginning of the recession, but for the vast majority of us, we still got a long way to go. And every mayor here is investing local dollars to put people back to work. But as you heard Vice President Nutter mention, you know, things like workforce development used to be bipartisan issues. You know, every president since Eisenhower has supported the national highway system, has supported transportation funding. These were issues, the federal aviation, the FAA, these were things that historically weren't mired in partisan politics. And today you can't get support for virtually any of these investments. And again, as I said earlier at a breakfast, not all spending is equal. The fact is we do have to cut our deficits. Many of us, particularly the man right here to my right and I, have talked about Simpson-Bowles as a template for addressing the deficit and the debt, looking at, you know, making smart cuts that make sense at a time when the deficit is as high as it is. But you can't cut your way out of this crisis. You got to make investments too. You got to make investments in infrastructure. You got to make investments in police and fire to keep our cities safer. You got to make investments in our schools. You got to make investments that produce dividends at the end of the rainbow. And unfortunately, you have a Congress that is, as I said, punting and kicking, screaming a lot, and not doing enough to move the ball across the goal line.
Last year, when you came to this conference, all the mayors were here, you had much the same message, but then a year later, the community development block grant has been cut. The president's talked about more pain to come. Congress is more gridlocked than ever. So can you have any reasonable expectations that Washington will do anything for you guys except to look?
Well, look, we all agree, and I think you agree, that they deserve an F for failure. But as I said, we're at the midterm level. They still can improve on their grade, and they could do that by passing a number of the things that we just mentioned. We're duty bound, every one of us. I mean, there's not a one of us that come to Washington, D.C. to take in the sights. We're here to do work. We're here to fight for our cities. We're here to fight for America. It would be political malpractice for us to stay at home and not demand that the Congress do their job. I agree with you. I think we all agree that it's an uphill fight because the failure for them to do even the most minimal things that in the past have had bipartisan support is is pretty glaring and pretty clear. We are duty-bound to continue to push the message. And the fact that so many of you are here, I think, is a reflection that cities matter, as was mentioned, and that the Congress needs to do its job. Yes, Mr. Smith?
One thing, and we did accomplish something. The original proposals, for example, on CDBG were much more drastic, up above 60% cuts. And they ended up, what, around 17%. So we did do a lot. And one quick thing, you made a comment about what Congress can do for us. We're not here to ask Congress to do something for us. We want them to do things with us. I think that's the important thing. And for the American people. We're not asking around. Cities are economic drivers. And we're frustrated that cities, what we have to offer is not being recognized, and we're not working with us to maximize the great potential that we have in American cities. That's incredibly frustrating for mayors.
Mayor Smith, as a Republican, what would you say to Republican leaders in Congress who seem more intent on making drastic cuts in the kinds of programs you say are necessary?
Well, I would agree with our president. There are smart cuts, and there are dumb cuts. Smart cuts are cuts of inefficiencies, of programs that don't create benefits. Dumb cuts are when you cut the meat out of programs that provide the kind of dividends and returns that create economic growth. You know, look at where you're cutting. We recognize we have to be more financially frugal and prudent. We've done that. Everyone on this stand has made drastic changes in the way they operate their cities. We've had to look at how we can get the greatest return. We've had to look how we can invest a shrinking capital base to get the maximum return. That kind of discussion never happens in Washington. It's just, let's cut indiscriminately. That, as a Republican, that's what I want to see. That, to me, is a pure Republican principle. Let's make government more efficient. Let's make government better and more connected with people. That kind of discussion doesn't seem to be happening.
Let me mention one point here. Back to the gentleman. Can we have a little quiet in the back, please? You asked a question. Now, this is a basic business and economic principle. And you don't have to be Warren Buffett to figure this out. Even Jimmy Buffett can figure this out. If you had a product that was delivering 90% of your output, would you invest more in that product line, or would you cut that product line? I think if you're in business, you invest in that product line because that's where the bulk of your return is coming from. That's who we are. We're the 90% of the country, delivering jobs and making America strong. All we need is a more friendly federal government. We're not asking for a handout. We're asking for a hand in partnership and respect for what it is that we do for a living each and every day. That's what this is about.
And are there any Spanish-speaking cameras? There are? A couple? Okay. I'll say a few words in Spanish. And
Here in the report, you mentioned that over 3 of the nation's metropolitan areas will experience positive employment growth during this year. Can you elaborate a little bit more on how did you reach?
I'll let the staff who's more intimately conversant with the details. I've shared with you the broad brush, the 90% of economic output, the 85% of jobs that are created, the 80 cities that won't improve, won't get to where they were when this started. Can you hold it up back there? Maybe you got another meeting? Why don't you go to it? The 80 cities that won't recover the jobs that were lost at the beginning of this recession for another 5 years. And I think the mayors who have spoken have been fairly clear. This is a partnership. You know, as an example, they should have passed the surface transportation bill in September. They could have, instead of extending it over each year, they could have passed it a couple of years ago. But they can pass the surface transportation bill, the Boxer-Imhoff bill. That is millions of jobs to the U.S. economy. If they just passed America Fast Forward alone, that's another million jobs in the next few years. 1 million here, 1 million there. Now we're talking about real money, as you've heard before. So the fact is that from our vantage point, we want to see more than just cuts. We want to see investments that pay dividends at the end of the rainbow. When you fix a bridge that connects two major ports or two major cities, you're moving people and goods. You're not just creating the construction jobs, you're improving the infrastructure to grow the economy. And that's what we've seen that the Congress can't seem to distinguish between, as he says, as Mayor Smith says, the good cuts and the dumb cuts. And not investing in infrastructure, not investing in police and fire, not investing in CDBG, which has a 3-to-1 ratio of return, is not good cuts.
Can I make some? Yeah. There are jobs in our country. We mayors know this. The problem and the challenge we have is that we need, as you have heard, a partner in Congress that will look at workforce investment. We work very closely with our workforce investment boards and our businesses, because what we need and what the challenge is in our country today is to get our people equipped for the 21st century jobs. And yet, we need a partner in Congress, and my hope is that Congressman Klein, who is my congressman, who is the chairman of Education and Labor, will partner with us as we bring to him a vision for our country's workforce investment, because that will help with all of the jobs, not just create jobs, but putting people back to work by equipping them and educating them so that they can have the jobs that are available today. In our own metropolitan area of Minneapolis and St. Paul, and in my city as well, there are about 30,000 jobs available, but we do not have the people with the skills to fill those jobs. You can look all across America, and there are jobs. We just need Congress to partner with us. Partner with us and help put people back to work by educating them and equipping them for new jobs.
You know, Elizabeth Couch is the former president of this organization, a Republican. Scott Smith, a Republican, both supporting, as do the rest of the mayors here, workforce development. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the AFL-CIO, virtually the entire business community understands how important it is for us to train people for the jobs of the new economy, for the jobs where there's growth. And yet, this is another cut and another failure that the Congress is engaged in. We'll have one last speaker, and then I'll do a couple of Spanish points. Don Pasquale, newly re-elected to his seventh term. My God. Wow. 7th term.
We forgot about the terms.
Yeah.
Very forgettable terms.
Let me thank Mayor Fidalgosa for his logical explanation of the problems that we face, and in my opinion, the logical solutions. But what we haven't talked about, I think, is important, and I want to tell a little story here of a congressman from the Midwest who stood up just within the last year and told people in his district, few hundred people there, the problem in Washington today is that there are too many people trying to help keep the ship from sinking. And when the partisan politics reaches the point where they are actually not acting, I would say, rather than acting, but not acting in the best interests of all of us. We're all in this ship together. It points out the real problem here, and I think it's one thing that hasn't been said, the logical thought process that most people use, certainly in our cities. If I had a, if I had a councilman who stood up and said, I'm trying to bring the city down and make our unemployment go higher so that I can run for mayor or something, people would be outraged. They wouldn't care what politics. They wouldn't care. My own particular city, it's mostly Democrats, so they wouldn't care. They could be a Democrat. It could be a Democrat. They would still be critical of him or her. It's outrageous that we have this period of time where Congress believes that they can do things or, again, not act and therefore make things worse, and that will bring down the president and their party will take over. And in my opinion, it's the single most significant problem that we face, and that is to get Congress not to do something that's not logical, but to do something that makes sense based on what all of the comments that other mayors have made, whether it's infrastructure or reinvestment in the workforce, all of those things, we all know from common sense that is what we need to do. It's the politics, and it's the extreme partisan politics. And I would hope that that message goes throughout the country, that people are fed up with that kind of thinking. Let's move the country forward, and if you have a better idea and you win the election, let's come back afterwards and work together. I know that's too high-minded. I know that's too old-fashioned, but I'm an older guy, and I remember when Richard Nixon proposed things that helped our country by helping cities, neighborhood by neighborhood, CDBG, and all of the programs that we had. It was not viewed, and someone said this earlier, these issues were not viewed as Republican or Democrat. They were America's problems, and we worked together to fix them. If that's too naive or too whatever, then I apologize, but that is what I believe the vast majority of American citizens want, working together across the aisle, and we don't have time to let our competitors across the oceans go ahead of us further and further by investing in education, investing in workforce development, investing in infrastructure while we sit here and play partisan politics. That is the message today that hasn't been talked about, but it is the key one, and I would hope the more this information gets out to the public that this is really the strategy that they demand from their Congress people, independents, Republicans, or Democrats. Go work together and find solutions.
You know, if we could have people in the back, excuse me. Can we clear them out? You know, I think, Don, you used a metaphor that's particularly appropriate. All over the news, we've seen the controversy, the shame associated with a captain who jumped ship before all of his passengers were free and clear. The Congress has jumped ship, just like that captain. The economy is sinking as we speak, and they're sitting on a lifeboat refusing to throw out a life preserver to the American people. And that's why we're here today. En español quiero decir que gracias a los alcaldes que están presentes, entendemos que tenemos una cantidad de alcaldes representando las ciudades estadounidenses. Hoy anunciamos U.S. Metro Economies Report, que es un reporte que habla de la economía metropolitana en los Estados Unidos. Entendemos que 90% de la economía de nuestra nación está generado en nuestras ciudades y las áreas metropolitanas. Entendemos que 85% de los trabajos están producidos y generados en nuestras ciudades. Entendemos también que 340 de las ciudades están luchando ahorita para recubrir de la recesión y 80 de las áreas metropolitanas van a durar 5 años más para regresar a donde empezamos antes de la recesión. Entonces, es muy importante que este Congreso hace su trabajo. Y su trabajo número uno es generar trabajos, es regresar al pueblo, al mundo de trabajar. Y la verdad es que entendemos muy bien que no han hecho su trabajo, no han pasado una legislación para un transporte o legislación para transportación que puede generar millones de dólares de trabajos. No han regresado los oficiales de policía, los maestros, a las escuelas y a las calles de nuestras ciudades y estamos aquí a pedir que hacen su trabajo en estos momentos. So thank you very much. Yes, why don't every mayor please come on up and introduce yourselves, please.
Elizabeth Couts from Burnsville, Minnesota.
Roy Buell, Dubuque, Iowa.
Mike Coleman, Mayor of Columbus, Ohio.
Don Plisquellic, Mayor of Akron, Ohio, and past President of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. Proudly.
7-time elected.
Randy Walker, Mayor of Garden City, Michigan.
Joe Riley, the Mayor of Charleston, South Carolina.
10 times? How about 10 times?
Scott Smith, Mayor of Mesa, Arizona.
Stephanie Rawlings Blake, the Mayor of Baltimore.
John Dickert, the Mayor of the greatest tasting cities of water, Racine, Wisconsin.
Carol Chen, Mayor of Cerritos, California.
Mayor Linda Thompson, City of Harrisburg, capital of Pennsylvania.
John Bensavango, Mayor of Hamilton, New Jersey.
Tony Mack, Mayor of Trenton, New Jersey.
Yes.
Good seeing you. Thank you. We're good?
I think we have, is that everybody? Yes. Thank you very much.